Hey friends, a quick reminder that we are having a Saturday studio open house and community conversation at our podcast studio where I'm recording this very message at Techtown. It's going to be on Saturday, July 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Free coffee, free donuts. Please RSVP on Eventbrite. You can search for Daily Detroit. We'll also put a link in the show notes. RSVP so we know how much stuff to get. Looking forward to seeing you out there and connecting with our listeners. Hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go. I'm J.R. Stays, coming to you from our studio at Techtown. It is Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. This episode is a conversation with somebody I find pretty interesting. Simon Moss, he is the co-founder of Global Citizen. Next week, there will be a large conference and event happening at the Hudson's Detroit complex. And I wanted to talk to Simon because anytime this number of bigwigs and people from around the country have their eyes on this city, I want to know what's happening. I want to know why. I want to know what they're interested in. Now, Global Citizen now, they talk about themselves as that they bring together leaders from business, government, media, philanthropy, nonprofits, and culture to explore what it takes to build inclusive, sustainable cities. This summit will be all about that. And disclosure, I will be attending it as well, talking to some folks on the ground that are involved in all of this. You know, the huge interest in Detroit in recent years is really fascinating. I also think it's a great opportunity for people to connect and, you know, maybe harness some of the resources that are so desperately needed in the city to make amazing things happen. All right, let's get into that conversation with Simon Moss. Joining me virtually is Simon Moss. He is the co-founder of Global Citizen. Simon, welcome to the show. Where does this podcast find you today?
G'day, Jet. I'm coming to you from New York.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I'm excited about this Global Citizen Now conference, the names attached to it and what's happening at the newly completed Hudson's Detroit in downtown Detroit. But for those who don't know, why don't we set the table a little bit about what Global Citizen is and specifically Global Citizen Now?
Sure. So Global Citizen is the world's leading international advocacy organization. Our mission is to end extreme poverty, and we've spent the last 10, 15 years building a global community of everyday people, just folks like you and I, who raise their voice and take action to have huge impact all around the world. So we mobilize millions of people, and through those efforts of those millions of people, we've helped unlock $49 billion worth of commitments to impact 1.3 billion lives all around the world to help fight poverty and create a better future.
So why focus on Detroit for the first time with this conference?
So we've been talking to our friends all across America or across the world, and we've seen that while our focus is often international, it's often talking to people all around the world. So many of the issues that we were talking about in sub-Saharan Africa, in Southeast Asia, or in Latin America were the same issues that when we talked to our friends across the Midwestern America, that they were grappling with. I can't tell you how many people, when I say, hey, we're off to Detroit, go, oh, why would you want to go there? And they're never people who've been to Detroit. They're never people who've actually spent time looking at the amazing things that Detroit is doing, not just in revitalizing its downtown and urban core, but in terms of creating really innovative, enterprising, interesting ideas that are actually really going to drive the future of cities. And for us at Global Citizen, create a future where everyone has opportunity, where everyone has a chance to achieve success, to pursue their dreams. And that's driven by creativity and innovation and entrepreneurial ideas. And for us, as we looked to grow what we were doing with Global Citizen Now, we just kept meeting people who were saying, hey, have you seen what's happening in Detroit? Here's a town that is really driving interesting ideas that are what the future should look more like. And we said, great, let's go down, let's be a part of that, and let's help amplify that to the rest of the world and to the rest of the country. And most importantly, let's help create a platform where we can drive great new investments in to help change and grow what's happening in Detroit and Michigan.
Well, and that's something I think that's pretty obvious to us and our listeners, of course, but I think it's so important for the world to see that. We've been doing this for nearly 1,700 episodes, and there are so many creative, interesting projects, people that are making things happen. So when you talk about this conference and investments, what are you looking to drive out of this? We're going to convene all these people. It's going to be, speakers and all that. But what is your goal that happens out of this?
Sure. So Global Citizen Now events are all about taking thoughts and ideas and turning them into actions. We've all been to lots of conferences where people talk about problems. We want to talk about solutions, and we want to give the platform over to people who are announcing, doing and creating things that are great. So we'll be running a series of both panel discussions and breakouts, but then most importantly, hosting a series of announcements about new investments that are happening, everything from a small business award that we're running with PayPal, one of the world's largest payment platforms that's providing opportunities to small business owners, to something we're doing with Bridgewater, one of the world's largest hedge funds, talking about how the big shape of the economy is changing and how people can drive ideas that are a part of that, through to really tangible things. We've got a couple announcements about new schemes that are being taken up in Detroit. They're going to be generating dozens to hundreds of jobs, that are going to be generating small loans and grant capital for small businesses in Michigan, because we know that so many of the ideas that really drive creativity and innovation, they come from individual people who've got a great idea. And they're the sorts of people who I've been meeting when I've been in Detroit lots over the last year, who'll come up to you at an event and say, hey, I'm working on this idea. I've got an idea for a restaurant. What do you think? I'm building this community initiative. What do you think? Through to big organizations. We're thrilled to be hosting a number of the team from the Detroit Pistons who've been working tirelessly behind the scenes and who, as many of your listeners would know, have been investing with the city in rebuilding basketball courts and providing summer meals to hundreds of community members across the city, and who right now are embarked on a huge project with Henry Ford Health to help create jobs and health and wellness all together in part of the city. So we're excited to be hosting probably about 10 different announcements next week, alongside all of the really important discussions for people in the room.
So you say you've been in Detroit for a few times over the last year. What is something that you have learned that you now think differently than when you started doing your visits to the city?
So, as you can probably tell from my accent, I didn't grow up in Detroit or America. I grew up in Australia. And growing up in Australia, our vision of Detroit was Motown, it was motor cars, and then it was urban blight. And it was this idea that Detroit was like the poster child of things gone wrong. And we still see elements of that coming through in political discussions, not in Detroit, but people talking about America. And so what I knew from friends who'd spent a lot of time there, and the couple of visits I'd done in the past, was that wasn't an accurate representation. But it was only in spending time with our grassroots partners in Detroit and spending time with communities that we really saw that so many Detroiters were aware of that history that everyone knows, but that were really heads down doing the important work, that were creating great new organizations, initiatives, and having felt, and this is the sense I got talking to people, having felt abandoned by a lot of people from outside of Detroit or outside of Michigan. A lot of folks just stopped trying to correct other people's misperceptions. And so for me, what I saw was a remarkably vibrant cultural community who are generating new ideas and who are creating new things that are already changing the world. A culinary scene and a nightlife scene that has just so much energy that is breaking all across the country. I saw entrepreneurs and innovators who, because they didn't necessarily have a huge amount of support getting started, learned to bootstrap their way to ideas and products that found their audience, and so often had really authentic relationships with their customers that, dare I say, as someone who lives in New York City and Brooklyn now, you don't always get. And so I think that connection from heart and passion, the hard work that so many of the Detroiters we've met have been putting into what they're doing, is a story that we're so excited to be amplifying and taking to the rest of the country. And a very quick example I'd give is I was talking to a CMO person at one of the large Detroit-based organizations, and they said, look, we're really proud to be from Detroit, but we don't really tell anyone about that. We can't tell our audience that we're bragging on ourselves. They'd call us out on it. And I remember saying, but look at what you're doing. It's remarkable. I think you could do with telling the rest of the country and the rest of the world how interesting, how important, and how impactful what you're doing is. And that's something that we really hope to be able to spotlight through all the activities that we've got going on.
Well, I think some of that comes from our culture. I think about, my family very steeped in the automotive world, working in the plants, things like that, where the show of our pride is the vehicle that comes off the showroom, right? So for us, oftentimes as Detroiters, our extension of pride is what the person bought or what we built. And we're not sometimes as good about hey, we need to hype up this other thing, especially in this age. We're just so used to letting the work. Like when you listen to Motown, it's good. We don't have to brag about it.
Exactly. And I think we live in a society right now where attention needs someone to be bragging on it. And I think we're really proud to be bragging on some of what Detroit's doing, to take it to the rest of the country, because there are some really great things that are happening. We're excited to be bringing Wyclef Jean from the Fugees down next week. And he's so excited because he's partnering with a whole bunch of local Detroit creatives to showcase their work. And the energy that you see out of these conversations is something that's really, really remarkable. And that's, I think, the kind of thing that Detroiters should be incredibly proud of. But also, we have an opportunity to take out to the rest of the country to change this perception that Detroit is a city of the past, because actually I think it's a city that is marching boldly and strongly to the future, if we can find ways to lift up, amplify, promote, and unlock the potential of so many of the young, not just young, but emerging creatives and entrepreneurs and innovators and business owners who are forging their way in totally different industries, because it's not Motown and motor cars anymore that is, I think, the defining image of what Detroit is.
Well, even if you look at the statistics, now obviously the metro region is a little different, but in the city proper, there is only one automaker that's in the top 10 of our employers now in the city of Detroit. And I don't think people realize that. We don't have a ton of auto factories. We do have some suppliers here. Before we go on, I want to ask you a little bit. You are a co-founder of Global Citizen. What brought you to do this work? Because I don't know if this is the kind of thing that you look up in kindergarten. You're like astronaut, global work. You know what I mean? How'd you get here?
Yeah, look, I was a college student, and I, like lots of college students, was trying to work out what I cared about out in the world. And I remember doing a poli-sci class in first year and just going, wait, that's how the world works? That doesn't seem right. And so for me, the journey was trying to reconcile what I saw in the newspaper with friends in places all over the world. And it was this idea that so often it's people at a grassroots level in communities who are doing the hard work, who have the most amazing entrepreneurial and impactful ideas, that if we could help them navigate power structures to get access to money, to get access to the people who can help make their ideas scale and be bigger, that could have a huge impact. And so as myself and the couple of guys who I met at college who started Global Citizen back in Australia a long time ago, all of whom had this sense of traditional charities do great work, but that alone isn't going to operate at the scale. And so we said, how do we fill gaps? How do we bring people together? And for us, this universe of pop culture and the attention economy that we all live in, saying, how do we use that as a tool, pair that up with people with amazing, remarkable ideas, and use that to drive investment, drive policy change, drive innovation that could ultimately unpack scale. And honestly, when I came to America 10 years ago, having lived in Australia and Germany and Britain, my vision of America was really it was what I saw on TV, and it was Los Angeles and New York. And so much of the journey that's led us to be in Detroit for this project, and hopefully for many more, is this sense that America isn't those two big cities that the rest of the world knows. America is full of hardworking people who are doing some really fantastic work, and for whom actually many of the barriers in terms of access to impact and capital and achieving their dreams comes down to the same barriers that we see when we're working in the Amazon rainforest with Indigenous groups who are looking to be able to get their cocoa beans to market in a way where they get the return on that investment for cultivating those crops, not it goes to some company that doesn't invest back in the community.
Well, you've mentioned the words investment and policy and power structures a few times in this conversation, and I can't help but think about the challenges that I know a lot of Detroiters with great ideas face, because we do have a problem of underinvestment. I see so many businesses, ideas, they are working so hard, and they have come up with the most creative solutions to get around the fact that access to capital is really hard here. I know that there has been progress in certain corners, but I also know and from my travels and from my other work, that there is still so much more work to go. So how do you look at opening up those doors to more folks?
Yeah, there are some remarkable grassroots organisations already doing a lot of this work. So really a lot of the credit goes out to them. Next week, we'll be making an announcement, or one of our partners will be making an announcement around a new initiative that's been growing across the Midwest to link grassroots entrepreneurs with access to small capital. There's also the great work of groups like the Rocket Community Fund and others who've been working to increase financial inclusion. And I think that the third part of it, and this is the bit that we find most interesting, although hardest to measure, is that there's an awful lot of financial decision and access to capital work that has to do with perceptions, not business plans. And we see this when we're working to try and drive investment into sub-Saharan African countries on promoting jobs in the creative economy. You go down the bank, you go to someone and you're like, I have this business idea. And they absolutely say, let us look at your business plan. Tell us what your idea is. But then there's a certain element of, but you're not from a big city. You haven't done this before. Are you sure you know what you're doing? And so for us, some of the most important work we can do is lift up the groups who are already succeeding as an example to say, guys, this is what your perception should be. Your perception should be that it's not easy, but there are people doing great work, because actually it's those organisations who bootstrap their way, self-fund through so much of those early phases that leads to the big scale that's there. And I think it's about making sure that we break down some of the barriers that make people feel, if they've got a great idea, like they can't go and approach, whether it's a financial organisation or whether it is an economic development corporation. We're thrilled to be working with Michigan Economic Development as part of Global Citizen Now Detroit. One of the big things we've been talking to them about is to say, hey, let's not just come along and have you talk. Let's also have you come and spend time with all of the grassroots entrepreneurs we're going to have in the room, so that it can be a real informal conversation that will help people unpack what it is that is going to help them work out how to navigate those tricky application pitching and other structures. Because honestly, I walk down the street in a city like New York, the world doesn't have a shortage of money. It's right now got a shortage of imagination and ability to get the money from the people who've got a whole lot of it and who are working out how to get something out of it into the hands of the people who are doing the hard work and who have the creative ideas that are going to power jobs and innovation and prosperity and community, most importantly, over the next generation.
Yeah, that perception thing is so important. In a previous life, I worked around international business out from a company based in Detroit, and I saw a lot of that firsthand. And working in the media business here, I have seen some of those things too, where I'll have a meeting with someone and they'll be like, hey, why, you're really, you guys do a lot of cool stuff. Why don't you do it in Columbus, Ohio? Or why don't you do it in, Chicago, Illinois, or New York, or LA, or Phoenix, or some other area of the country? I'll back you if you're there. And I think that's misses the magic that is everything that is Detroit, which I still believe is the Paris of the Midwest.
I mean, I love that. I love that example. And so many of the people we chat to, and we're thrilled to be hosting some next week. I was talking to some folks in the city of London on Friday, and they're grappling with some of the same questions as well. And so I think this idea that Detroit can be a beacon, not just of its own work, but can help generate an idea about what does the future of cities look like? Because there are so many cities all across America and all across the world who are grappling with this sense of, if I'm not Paris or New York what role do I have? And yet actually it is a huge opportunity for us to shift some of those perceptions and break down what some of those ideas are. And Jer, if I were to ask you as someone who works in the media, when you say, I'm hosting this show about Detroit, if you talk to people in Los Angeles or New York or other big financial centers, what do they say to you about Detroit?
I think it all depends on if they've been here. If they haven't been here, and there's really the social media conversation, because so often Detroit gets politicized. Detroit for years has been a football of the major political parties here. And it's always a finger point, and depends on how they get their news. So if they're plugged into the political news and they have a strong political opinion, they come in with whatever belief they've been told. But if they've been here and if they've visited, I think back to a line that Dan Gilbert said a while ago, where it's like, if you get them here, they see the vision. If someone's visited here and they've done stuff, their perception starts to shift, and not only just see the beauty that is here, but also the opportunities, because there is so much that can be done in Detroit that you just, honestly, there's just so much opportunity here that you can't do anywhere else. And it's because of the people. It's because of, the things that are still, honestly, infrastructure that's still here that could be activated. We've got room for so many more people and so many ideas to partner with the local people that are here. So I really find that is the dividing line. Have you been here? Have you seen something? Have you met someone from here? Or are you stuck in a tweet bubble?
I think that's well said, because that mirrors much of my experience as well. And I think that as we look at Detroit or Michigan right now, I think exports 60,000 graduates a year to the rest of the country, because you've got some of the most fantastic colleges and schools in the whole country. If we could collectively generate the jobs and the business ideas that keep many of those people there, I think that Detroit is on track for just a really remarkable next few decades, powered by that creativity, that energy, that hard work that you were talking about.
So I'm going to end with a very tough question. Get ready, because here's the thing. You visited Detroit. You've said this. You've been here. What is your favorite spot that you have visited so far? What has your heart?
So, look, as a basketball tragic, my heart really, on one hand, my heart sits there, but I actually think that the creative energy that I saw, I was out one night with some of our team, and we stumbled across a record store that was throwing itself a little party. And at 10:30, 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, there's dozens of people just spilled out onto the sidewalk, relaxing, chatting, but not just chatting in a random kind of how's your day way. I was meeting people who were working on album concepts. I was meeting people who had ideas to expand their businesses. And I was like, man, it's 11 o'clock at night. And so to me, it was that energy that you get it from the downtown corridor that I've just been hugely invigorated by, and that is such a different picture of what Detroit is than I think the people who are stuck in their tweet bubbles are experiencing.
I would agree with that, and that is something that I enjoy very much, being from the city, having visited other areas, and then also living here for a long time. Simon Moss, global citizen, I really appreciate your time. Why don't we tell people when this is going to be happening and how they can learn more?
Fantastic. Thanks, Jet. So Global Citizen Now is a series of events happening in Detroit, July 8 through 10. We have a series of volunteer days. We have a full main stage summit day, as well as a couple of events and activities and partnerships with fantastic groups like Love Detroit and Urban Sanctuary Farms. And so we are going to be all across the city next week. You can learn more at globalcitizen.org/now/Detroit.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. I really appreciate you. I also appreciate our members on Patreon, patreon.com/Daily Detroit, because local media needs local support to survive and thrive. Feedback, as always, dailydetroit@gmail.com, or leave a voicemail, 313-789-3211. I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.